Hello, it's Mandy here. I'd like to just first of all say, if you've got a sentimental connection to calling me by my old name, then that's fine. But I would like you to try to call me Mandy or Amanda under normal circumstances. I know it's weird, but it really does help, and it really boosts my self-confidence, and makes me feel a lot better, makes me happy. So, yeah, drink and think tonight. Okay, I've been asked to introduce the second part of the topic, which is, can there be intellect without consciousness? And my answer to that is, of course, complicated. I think that, first of all, obviously we need to define terms, and I think basically intellect is the ability to perceive valid patterns, whereas consciousness is much harder to define. And the reason I find it difficult to answer is that I am in fact a panpsychist. That is, I believe that all things are conscious. There is an element of consciousness which is a physical property of either matter or space, which is expressed in certain arrangements of that matter that mean that what is not apparently conscious is in fact conscious but is badly arranged, and so is in a sense severely disabled. So it's unable to see, hear, smell, touch, taste, express itself, move, and so forth, because the matter in it is not arranged in the right way. And that which is conscious, is obviously conscious, is the result of the arrangement of matter in a similar way to electromagnetism being a fundamental property of many particles, and then the arrangement produces magnets or not magnets, depending on what you want. And so it's difficult for me to say, can there be intellect without consciousness? Because intellect, being part of any system will be conscious in one sense or another. Now, that means that, no, there can't be intellect without consciousness, but it is in fact trivially true that there can't be intellect without consciousness. In another sense, you might be able to arrange matter in such a way that, in theory, that it would not be conscious, or rather it would not express its consciousness, because it would be arranged in the wrong way. It would be like it's something that functionally equivalent to a machine for perceiving patterns validly, which is unable to manifest consciousness because it's paramagnetic in terms of consciousness. That is, that the arrangement of its consciousnesses stop it from expressing that consciousness in that way. And I'm not sure whether that's possible or not, but clearly you can have a magnet where you have polarity in one direction and polarity in the opposite direction, they cancel each other out, and then there's no visible ferromagnetism in that object. And so if there's kind of polarity in consciousness, then that's true. But I want to talk about why I believe that consciousness is a fundamental feature of reality. And it actually comes down to my basis, the basis of my ontology, because fundamentally it appears to me that people always have a vested interest in believing what they believe, and that they rationalise their belief. They use what might be regarded as ego defences to come to the conclusion of what's true. And it isn't about looking at things rationally, which is possibly not even desirable, let alone possible. Because I can remember, for example, being in a tutorial, an MA tutorial, and my tutor saying to me, and I was concerned about animal consciousness, because you know the adage is, the point is not can they reason, can they talk, but can they suffer, saying that because there was no language in non-human animals, assuming that there is no language in all non-human animals, which is a contentious point, that would mean that they had no consciousness. So there's a vested interest there. I am a language-using primate. Other things are not language-using primates. Therefore, they're not conscious. Isn't that convenient? If you want to eat cows, I think it's very convenient. And I think it's a similar convenience to the idea, which is fictitious, by the way, that women don't have souls and men do. I wonder if it was the women that thought of that. So that's the kind of thing that happens when you use rational arguments. I think that possibly all rational arguments work in that way. They always have a basis behind them, which is to do with your own personal, individual experience and your own vested interests. And as a result, what you need to do is create an ontology, a fundamental nature of reality, your view of the fundamental nature of reality must give everything the maximum benefit of the doubt, which means, for example, and I think I've said this before, that the maximum benefit of the doubt regarding consciousness is that the whole of reality contains consciousness, because that way you're not tempted to write things off as mere objects rather than conscious beings, and therefore pick on them and enable them to be ill-treated if it turns out that they do have consciousness. And that's why I adopt that position. It's not a rational metaphysical position as such, because metaphysics is not fundamental. Metaphysics is the collection of worldviews that you have as a result of your own vested interests. And if you want to step back from all your vested interests, you have to assume that everything is conscious. You also have to assume that the past exists, because if you don't assume the past exists, then you are in denial, for example, about the Holocaust. So that's the reason I adopt that position. So if I say that intellect can exist without consciousness, I am saying that it's okay to treat pattern recognizing systems badly and destructively. And I don't want to do that. So that's where I'm coming from. But we could look at it in other ways. For example, there are other views of the nature of mind out there. For example, physicalism, which is sort of similar to what I believe, although I'm sort of anomalously monist, really. But anyway, I'm trying to think of an example. Can you have intellect without consciousness? If you're a dualist and you thought there were souls and there were bodies, and bodies could be intellectual because you could make a computer, it wouldn't automatically attract a soul. That computer might be able to recognise patterns and it would have artificial intelligence, but it wouldn't be conscious. Similarly, it might be that functionalism makes things conscious. So the fact that something has certain inputs, outputs, and internal states makes it conscious. So I don't think you could have intellect without consciousness in that position, because I think a pattern recognising object would automatically have internal states. But they may not be the same internal states. It could be there's a special set, or a special kind of internal state that means that if functionalism is true, then certain things are conscious and other things are not, and some of those are intellectual and some of them are not. Beyond that, what have we got? We've got idealism. Clearly with idealism you can't have intellect without consciousness, because all things are the mind, and all things are constructed by the mind, although there may be some things which are merely constructed by the mind and not the objects, and only ever the objects of consciousness rather than the subjects of consciousness, in which case, if there can be something which is purely the object of consciousness, then, and also a system which recognises patterns, which is how I'm defining intellect, but I mean there may be other definitions as well, so you could replace the definition of your choice for mine there, then that also would be possible, at least in theory. What else have we got? We've got behaviourism. In behaviourism sees externally observable states as the basis of consciousness, and that I think really that it takes an intentional stance towards it. I know it's not used in that context, but I think that's what it's really doing. So behaviourism, you can't have intellect without consciousness, because an object which exhibits behaviour or does things which show that it recognises patterns will automatically be conscious, because consciousness is out there defined by the perception of the observer, the correct and accurate perception of the observer, so that would work very well. So what have we got left? We've got anomalous monism left, we've got panpsychism, which I've already covered, and we've got physicalism. And as far as all of those are concerned, I'm right now not sure whether what that would do with consciousness. I think I've gone on for a very long time now, so I'm going to stop and say I want to talk about autogynephilia and transgender issues tomorrow, which sort of edges into the radical feminist view, and I really want to go there because I think I've got a very good angle on it right now. And so anyone watching for the transgender side is interested, please watch that video, which will probably be tomorrow. Bye for now.